feels like we're in the middle of nowhere, doesn't it? But we're not that far from all sorts of places. A couple of miles from Woking, a couple of miles from Camberley. I think we're going to go left here. As we make our way to Bisley, I'll tell you a little bit more about what I'm up to. So I have a website, Bikes and Boots, and I have two YouTube channels, Bikes and Boots, where I record my little motorbike rides and I pick out places that I hope will be of a little bit of interest, looking for the more unusual places that maybe not everyone knows about. And then also, when I get to my destination, usually I go for a little walk and I film that, looking for wildlife, lovely countryside. And I put that on my other YouTube channel, which is called Get Up and Get Out There. And that's all about the importance of getting up, getting outside in the countryside, and enjoying wonderful scenery and wildlife that we've got in this country. So that is really what I'm all about. So just going down this lovely little country lane at the back of Windlesham. In a few minutes we'll be at Bisley and we'll have a look at the NRA and see how that's changed over the years. The village of Bisley, heading for the NRA. I'll just point something out to you on the right here. When I was a youngster, because this is quite close to where I was brought up, there used to be a massive derelict house on the right here. So we used to get to it through this little track on the right. It's called Shaftesbury House, and it was a proper stately home-sized place, and it had been turned into some sort of children's orphanage by Lord Shaftesbury, who was a well-known philanthropist, I guess you could call him. It's been knocked down, it's now Coldingley Prison. On the right here, that's all Bisley Ranges, rifle ranges. Bisley National Rifle Association. It doesn't seem to have changed much. So all those big pavilions on the right, slow down so you can see them, there used to be dozens and dozens of those, and a lot of them represent all sorts of countries all around the world. Lots of Commonwealth countries had pavilions here, because Bisley used to be the world centre for shooting. Lots of these places like those on the left, St George's Lodge, they used to be little small pavilions, because even tiny little countries and tiny little islands used to have a presence here. None of these mobile homes used to be here. butcher boy. I used to deliver meat there years ago. Just going to stop here. And this used to be the railroad years ago. We're going to go into Brookwood after this, and there was a station somewhere here. There used to be a train line from Brookwood called the Bisley Bullet, so people could come here from London on the train. Change at Brookwood and get a train right into Bisley Camp. So Brookwood, a tiny little village, was really a bit of a hub. There's something else I'll tell you about it in a second, or a few minutes when we go through Brookwood. On the left here used to be the Running Deer. That was like a railway track with small rifles firing. That used to be the shotgun range. Here, as kids we used to work on those. See the little coloured squares at the end? They're about 1,000 yards away, so the guys firing at them wouldn't necessarily be able to see what they'd hit. So you used to be in what they called the butts. You used to pull the target down, put a little patch on it, push it back up, and then mark it with a paddle, a bit like a table tennis bat on a long pole, to let the shooter know where he'd hit the target. Here's some of the rifle shots now. And down there to my left, where it says no entry, those were like the real back ranges where I think they could shoot for a mile. And of course the big prize here was called the Queen's Prize in July. This place used to be a hive of activity, a real hive of activity. I mean, I know there's a few people around, but in the summer, back in the day, there'd be thousands of people here competing in all sorts of rifle competitions. This place on the right here, go in there and have a little, this used to be called Bisley Pavilion. And back in the early 70s, it was quite a famous gig spot. So a lot of the very famous pop acts of the 70s, Slade, Faces, Arthur Brown, many others, used to do little concerts there on Thursday nights. Discotheque on a Sunday night, concerts on Thursday nights. And there's Fulton's Rifles. We used to go in there as kids and have a look at the guns. Must have been there 100 years. Some more of the little pavilions here. I remember there was one, it might be even on the end there somewhere, it was a Falkland Islands. That's the first time I'd ever heard of the Falkland Islands, because they had their own pavilion here. There's a train at the end of the railway track. The main station. I think there was 2 stations in here. That's really great coming in and see all this. It's something that probably people that live around here don't even know much about now, but it was very, very big back in the 60s and 70s. course, you can't have pistol shooting anymore, and there were a lot of pistol ranges here. So I guess now what they do is fire the old 303s 1,000 yards and other rifles. There we are, NRA at Bisley. So this is just the edge of Brookwood going towards Pirbright. And I said a little while ago that I would talk to you about Brookwood. Brookwood's a tiny little village, but it served Bisley and it served the cemetery by rail from London Waterloo. So it was a very, very busy railway station in the old days. The cemetery, I think, had 3 railway stations in it, and I think Bisley had 2. And there were trains coming out of London to the cemetery, you know, several times a day, and to Bisley at busy times. It used to be the busiest cemetery in the world, and I'm surprised it looks like the gates are open, so I'm going to go in and show you a couple of little bits. There were 3 pubs in here when I was a kid. There were 3 railway stations, 3, it might even have been 4 pubs. And the first thing that comes to mind war graves, because The Omen, the film The Omen, was filmed in these war graves. It's a massive cemetery, probably about a mile across, a couple of miles across at some points. It's fenced off, the gates and things, and that's where The Omen was filmed, in there. Just going to make an explanation. I was just talking to a security guard there who was watching me with eagle eyes, and it was only because that is actually American soil, and she wanted to make sure I didn't ride my motorcycle on American soil. So, an interesting place, and there's lots of famous people buried here. There's been lots of films made in here. Randall and Hopkirk TV series had bits filmed in here, and the famous Russian oligarch Boris Berezovsky is buried here. The village of Pirbright now. There's just one thing I want to show you around the corner here. Quickly get off my bike. Come to look at that great big stone there. There we are. Henry Morton Stanley. A lot of people that live around here probably don't know that's even there. and a lot of people probably don't even know who he is. So many of you may be aware of the saying Dr. Livingstone, I presume, and it was a very well used saying back in the day. Maybe if you saw somebody who was a stranger or even a friend that you hadn't seen for years, people often used to say Dr. Livingstone, I presume. Well, Henry Morton Stanley was the guy who said that. He went out to Africa because Dr. Livingstone, who was a famous missionary, had gone missing. Nobody had heard from him. Henry Morton Stanley worked for the New York Times. I think he was a Scotsman by birth, but he lived in America, worked in America as a journalist. And he went out looking for Dr. Livingstone, who I guess was a fellow Scot. And when he found him, he is supposed to have uttered the immortal words, Dr. Livingstone, I presume. And that is where Henry Morton Stanley is buried, because he lived in Pirbright. Or Brookwood, depending on where you feel the border lies. So we're just in the edge of Pirbright here, West Heath. And just round the corner here is where Henry Morton Stanley used to live. So just round this corner there's a funny old brick castle shaped building. Just see it through the trees there. Easier to see when there's not leaves on the trees. But that's where Henry Morton Stanley used to live. And I do believe the family might still live there. Well, they certainly lived there when I was a lad. It's quite a big estate. It goes about maybe a mile up the back there, squashed between army land. There's a great big lake in there. So he obviously made himself a few bob hunting for Dr. Livingstone. This area is possibly now in Brookwood again. It's called Stony Castle. It's the camping ground, or was the camping ground for the household cavalry who used to bring their horses out here for summer holiday every year. That little area on the left there. It's all grown up now, you can't really see much of it on the road. But it was quite a big open space, and for the entirety of the summer, that's where the household cavalry would camp. One more little place I want to show you around the corner here. A bit more of interest for motorcyclists. I'll be there in a few minutes. So, those of you that are old enough to remember ITV World of Sport on a Saturday afternoon back in the 60s, this is the start line of the Tunnel Hill scrambling course, quite famous back in the day. This was all open land here. Those trees have all grown up in the last 50 years, and it was quite a famous place because it was the holding area, or the holding place, of the Boxing Day Scramble and the Easter Scramble, two of the big events of the year back in the day, when such people as Arthur Lampkin, Dave Bickers, Vic Eastwood, Jeff Smith, can't remember many more, riding BSAs, Triumphs, and the new kid on the block, the Greaves. So quite a famous place in Scrambling, which was a kind of forerunner of motocross. The bikes would all be lined up across here, and when the flag went down, 50 or 60 bikes would go flying up there, round to the right. Then there was a very narrow little gully, 2 or 3 bikes wide, where they'd all fall off, except the lucky ones who got away. So that completes this little part 2 of my first episode of 2022. Thank you very much for watching. Really appreciate it. If you like any of this, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe below. Leave any comments you wish. Thank you very, very much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.